The map on the table had 43 human colony worlds marked on it. High Admiral Saru had already crossed out 9 of them. He was working on the 10th. Ardan Station sat at the edge of what humans called their border space. A mining colony, some trade routes, a few thousand people who had built their lives on a rock that the Veth conclave had decided it wanted. Saru drew a slow circle around it with the tip of his claw and did not feel anything in particular about the people living there. That was not cruelty, that was just how things worked. The Veth had been expanding for 300 years. Species got absorbed or they got removed. Most chose absorption. It was the sensible thing to do. Saru had given the same speech on 14 different worlds, and he had it memorized to the point where it no longer required thought. You cannot stop this. You can only decide how it ends for you. He had already written the speech for Ardan Station. Ambassador Fail sat in the corner with his recording device in both hands. He was a small, quiet man assigned to document this campaign for the Conclave archives. He had done this with Saru before, 3 years ago. That one lasted 4 days. Fail expected this to go faster. Sub-Commander Leva stood at the navigation table and said nothing. She had been saying nothing for most of the past hour, which was not unusual for her. What was unusual was the way her eyes kept returning to the intelligence reports stacked on the left side of the table, the one Saru had not opened. "You are reading those again," Saru said without looking up. "I read them earlier," Leva said. "I am thinking about them now." "Think about the approach vector instead." Leva pulled the navigation display closer and did not argue. That was the thing about Leva. She never argued. She just held on to information in a way that made Saru mildly uncomfortable if he let himself notice it. The fleet was 40 ships strong, 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, support vessels, troop carriers, and at the center of it all, the Veth flagship Ruling Tide, which was the largest ship Saru had ever commanded and the pride of the Conclave's 3rd expansion fleet. The humans had nothing in their registered military catalog that could touch it. He had checked 3 times. Signal Officer Draws ran the pre-jump checks from his station near the back of the bridge. He was young, competent, and deeply unaware that anything unusual was about to happen. He confirmed all 40 ships were in formation, all drives were green, all weapons were warm but not hot. "Jump on your order, High Admiral," he said. Saru looked at the circle he had drawn around Ardan Station. He thought about the monument. He had not decided yet whether to build it on the colony's main platform or on the rock face above the mining entrance. The rock face had a better view. "Jump," he said. The stars went strange and then came back different. Ardan Station appeared on the forward display as a cluster of lights at the center of the system. It was a modest place. Long corridors connecting pressurized habitats, docking arms reaching out like fingers, the slow spin of the outer ring where families lived. From this distance it looked peaceful. It also looked empty. No ships running, no distress signal, no panicked broadcast from a colony leader who had just seen 40 warships appear on their scanners. The communication channels were open and completely silent. Leva noticed first. "No evacuation traffic," she said quietly. Saru frowned. Colonies always ran when the fleet arrived. It was instinct. Even if they had nowhere to go, they ran. Ships launched. People scrambled for transports. Someone got on a radio and screamed. It was predictable, and it had been predictable every single time. Ardan Station was not doing any of that. "Maybe they did not detect us yet," Draws offered. "We are 40 ships," Leva said. "They detected us." The fleet moved forward. The silence continued. Saru ordered a standard hailing frequency opened and gave his prepared announcement, the one about resistance being unproductive and surrender terms being available. His voice went out across the system and came back as an echo off the colony's comm buoy and nothing else. Then Draws went still. His hand stopped moving on his console. He stared at his screen for a moment in the way people stare at something they are not immediately sure is real. "Hi, Admiral," he said. "I have a contact." "The colony." "No," he checked his readings again. "Deep system. Behind the fourth planet, something large, very large, stationary. Drive signature is cold." He looked up. "It has been sitting there for a while." Saru walked to Draz's station and looked at the screen. The contact was there. One object. No identification signal. No movement. "Send a scout," he said. Two of the smaller destroyers peeled away from the formation and moved toward the fourth planet. Everyone on the bridge watched them go. The silence felt different now, heavier, and Leva had gone back to staring at the intelligence reports without touching them. The scouts reached the edge of scanner range. One of them opened a channel and began transmitting a detailed reading of the contact. The transmission stopped. Not interference, not static. It simply stopped mid-sentence as if someone had reached across space and closed a hand around the signal. Saru stared at the now silent comm panel. Fail, in the corner, lowered his recording device slightly. Draz's console lit up with a new reading. The large contact had not moved, but its drive signature had changed. It was waking up. Nobody on the bridge of the ruling tide spoke. They watched the contact signature on Draz's screen pulse slowly, like something breathing after a long sleep. The two scout destroyers were still out there, still visible on the formation map, but their comm channels had been dead for nearly 3 minutes. Leva walked to her own station and ran a secondary scan. The results matched Draz's. Large mass, dense, metal-rich hull composition so thick it barely reflected scanner waves cleanly. Whatever was behind that fourth planet had been designed to absorb attention rather than attract it. "Bring the fleet to weapons ready," Saru said. His voice was even. His expression showed nothing. Leva relayed the order without comment. The contact began to move. Not fast, not rushing toward them. Just a slow, deliberate slide out from behind the planet's shadow, like something choosing to be seen on its own terms rather than being found. Draz pulled the visual scanner feed to maximum range and put it on the main display. For a few seconds the screen showed only stars, then the shape appeared. It did not look like a warship at first. It looked like a structure, something built into space rather than designed to move through it. The hull was layered in heavy armor plating stacked so deep that the underlying frame was invisible. There were no smooth lines, no elegant curves of the kind the Veth favored in their own designs. It was all flat angles and dense masses of reinforced material, and running along every surface were weapon ports. Rows of them, columns of them. Some large enough that Draz could read their dimensions, and had to check the numbers twice. Leva looked at the length reading on her screen. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at the ruling tide's own specifications on the panel beside it. "Hi, Admiral," she said. "I see it. That ship is." "I see it," he said again. The human vessel continued its slow advance. It had not raised any shields. It had not armed its weapons, or if it had, it was not showing active targeting signals. It simply moved toward them the way a mountain moves toward nothing, because mountains do not need to hurry. Draz read the length out loud. His voice did not shake, but it came out quieter than usual. The bridge went very still. Fail had stood up from his corner. He was holding his recorder but had forgotten to activate it. He was staring at the display with his mouth slightly open. He had seen warships before. He had documented 3 fleet campaigns. He had stood on the deck of the ruling tide and thought it was the largest thing he had ever seen in space. He revised that thought. Leva ran the comparative data. She did not want to. She ran it anyway because she needed the number to be real in front of her rather than in her head where it could be wrong. The human ship was 60% larger than the ruling tide. Its armor depth, in the section she could scan cleanly, was 3 times the standard they used for heavy cruisers. She pulled up the intelligence files, the ones Saru had ignored. She found the relevant page in under 30 seconds because she had already read the file 6 times, and she knew exactly where the relevant page was. Unconfirmed reports of large-scale human construction in deep survey zones. Assets not appearing in standard military registry. Nature and scale unknown. Nature and scale unknown. Target it, Saru said. Full fleet formation. Concentrate fire on the bow. Leva relayed the order. 40 ships brought their weapons to bear on the single vessel ahead. It was a lot of firepower. Even Leva could not argue with the numbers. One ship against 40 had a predictable outcome no matter the size. Then Draws made a sound. Not a word, just a sharp intake of breath. He pointed at his secondary display. Behind the fleet at the edge of the system's dark outer band, new contacts were appearing. One, then another, then 4 more in quick sequence. Their drive signatures were cold. They had been running cold for a very long time, tucked into the dark with engines off and every emission suppressed, waiting. The main ship had not been alone. It had been the face of something larger. 6 more vessels of the same class. The same dense, layered hulls. The same rows of weapon ports, arranged in a wide arc around the Veth fleet's rear and flanks. 7 ships total, all of them larger than anything the Veth conclave had ever built. Leva did not say anything. She did not think there was anything useful to say. Saru stood very still in the center of his bridge. The fleet was surrounded. Not tightly, not desperately, but with the calm geometric patience of something that had planned this arrangement well in advance. Every angle of retreat had a ship waiting at it. Every firing solution the Veth could run crossed into coverage from at least 2 of the human vessels. The main ship's comm system lit up. A human voice came through. A woman. She spoke slowly and without any particular emotion in her words, the way someone speaks when they are not angry, not afraid, and not performing. She said, "You should not have come here." 6 words, then silence again. Fail realized he had never activated his recorder. He pressed the button. He was not sure anymore what he was recording or how he would label it when he got home, but his hands needed something to do, and recording was the only thing he knew how to offer. The 7 human ships held their positions and waited. Inside the UES unyielding, nobody was running. That was the first thing a person noticed when they came aboard for the first time. In the old war documentaries, in the training simulations, in every drama ever made about space combat, people ran when battle was close. They moved fast, spoke fast, looked scared and alert and alive with urgency. The crew of the Unyielding did not run. They walked with purpose, spoke in short, clear sentences, and moved through their stations with the kind of settled calm that only came from having drilled the same procedures so many times that the body did it without asking the mind for permission. Admiral Renat Cross stood at the center of the bridge and watched the Veth fleet on her display. 40 ships. Formation slightly broken now, the rear elements pulling apart as they registered the other 6 battleships emerging from cold hold positions. She had expected that reaction. She had planned for it. She was 54 years old. She had gray in her hair and a scar along her jaw from a pressure seal failure 15 years ago that she had never bothered to have removed. She did not look like the kind of person anyone made monuments to. She looked like someone who had spent 3 decades making sure the thing in front of her right now would work exactly the way it was working. Captain Darrow Wells stood at the tactical station to her left. He was older than most of the crew, lean and quiet, with the habit of checking his data twice before speaking and never speaking more than he needed to. "Rear ships are disorganized," he said. "They did not expect the flanking group to be that far out." "Good," Renat said. "Forward formation is holding. The flagship is still pointed at us." "Also good." She studied the display. "They have about 80 seconds before their admiral makes a decision." Gunnery Chief Petra Olen's voice came up from the weapons level through the comm panel. All primary batteries confirmed hot. Secondary arrays tracking. Waiting on you. Keep waiting, Rena said. Ensign Bayo Addies was at the communications station, 23 years old and 3 months into his first deep space posting. He had done everything correctly since the battle readiness call went out. His hands had not shaken. He was proud of that. But now he was watching 40 alien warships on his screen, and he had a question he needed to ask even though he was not sure it was his place. Admiral, he said. Go ahead, Addies. Are we going to give them a chance to leave? Rena looked at him for a moment, not impatiently, just long enough to decide the question deserved a real answer. Yes, she said. She pulled the all-fleet comm open and gave the first withdrawal notice. Her voice went out to all 40 Veth ships simultaneously. She identified herself, identified the Unyielding and the battle group by designation, and told the Veth fleet exactly what the situation was. She told them the border they had crossed. She told them the colonies they had taken. She told them that the terms for a full withdrawal were available and that she would transmit them on request. She did not raise her voice. She did not use the word warning. She did not threaten. She set a timer on her display for 4 minutes and she waited. Through the viewport, space looked the same as always. Cold, dark, full of distance. Bayo found himself looking at the stars instead of his screen for a moment, thinking about how the light from some of those stars was older than his entire species, and how small and strange it was that 2 groups of living creatures were out here in the middle of all that darkness pointing weapons at each other over a line drawn on a map. Darrow ran the tactical overlay continuously, watching the Veth formation for any sign of movement toward a withdrawal vector. There was none. The fleet was reconfiguring instead, tightening, cycling weapons to active targeting. They are going to fire, he said. Yes, Rena said. 4 minutes is not up. No, it is not. She let the timer run. 30 more seconds. She watched the Veth formation complete its targeting cycle. She watched the flagship's forward batteries lock to her ship. The timer reached 0. She opened the comm again, same calm voice. She told them the window was closed. She told them what came next was their choice, not hers. Then she nodded to Petra Olen. The Unyielding's outer hull came alive. Every battery rotated to its assigned fire solution. The sound inside the ship was not dramatic, a deep, low hum, a series of mechanical confirmations from the weapons deck. Bayo watched his screen and saw the targeting overlay bloom across the Veth fleet like a net being cast. The Veth fired first. A wall of energy crossed the space between the 2 fleets. Concentrated, intense, the kind of volley that had ended most ships in any engagement Saru had ever commanded. It hit the Unyielding across its bow and forward midsections. The Unyielding kept moving. Draz's voice on the Veth bridge, 300,000 kilometers away, read the damage report out loud. His voice had gone very flat and strange, the way voices go when the number is so far outside expectation that the brain delivers it without expression, because it does not know what expression to attach to it. On the Unyielding, Rena heard none of that. She just felt the impact through the deck, noted the damage board was showing green across all critical systems, and waited for Petra's voice. Ready, Petra said. Fire, said Rena. The first thing Saru noticed was that the human ship did not fire back from a safe distance. It advanced. The Unyielding moved directly into the center of the Veth formation, into the densest concentration of fire, and it did not slow down or turn. It pushed forward at a steady speed like something that had decided the space ahead of it was already its own, and the ships in the way were a problem that would solve itself shortly. The 6 other human battleships in the outer arc began moving too, not inward. They spread further out, cutting off the retreat corridors one by one with the patience of something hurting rather than chasing. On the ruling tide, Saru's orders came faster now. He told his cruisers to concentrate fire on the Unyielding's engines. He told his destroyers to scatter and target the flanking ships. He told his support vessels to pull back. His voice was still controlled, but there was something under it now, a pressure, a crack forming in the certainty he had walked into this system with. Leva relayed every order. She kept her own voice flat. Inside the Unyielding, Petra Olin worked her weapons deck the way a craftsperson works a familiar bench. No wasted motion, no hesitation. She called targets by designation number. And her crew answered by number, and the weapons answered after that. The ship shuddered with each battery discharge, a deep rhythmic shaking that ran up through the floor into every person standing on it. Bayo Addies felt each one. He was tracking communications on his station and logging every Veth ship that went silent, which was a different kind of task than he had expected. He had thought it would feel like winning. It felt more like watching a list. The first Veth destroyer to break was the one directly to the Unyielding's port side. It had taken 3 concentrated hits from the forward batteries, and its hull integrity had collapsed along the midsection. It did not explode. It split slowly, the two halves drifting apart with small fires visible through the fracture line before the vacuum dealt with them. 2 more destroyers near the rear formation tried to run. One of the flanking battleships adjusted its arc and cut off the exit. They turned back. They had nowhere useful to go. Saru watched his formation map fall apart in segments. The cruisers were still fighting. They were good ships and their crews were not cowards, and they kept firing, kept targeting, kept trying to find the angle that would hurt the Unyielding enough to matter. Some of their shots hit. The Unyielding took damage. Bayo could see it on the board. Armor degraded in 2 forward sections. 1 secondary battery knocked offline. The Unyielding kept moving. Darrow Wells tracked the engagement from the tactical station and called adjustments in his quiet, twice-checking voice. He noted when a Veth ship changed behavior. He noted when a cluster of 3 cruisers tried to combine their fire in sequence rather than simultaneously, which was actually a smart tactic, and he told Petra so she could anticipate the timing. Then something changed in the Veth formation. That was not what Saru ordered. 3 ships near the center of the rear group broke from the main cluster and moved into a line between the retreating support vessels and the flanking human ships. They were not running. They were forming a rear guard, holding position so the rest of the fleet could pull back. Darrow saw it, rear guard forming, 3 cruisers, not the flagship. Renas studied the new formation. She looked at the designations of the ships holding the line. She looked at the ones pulling away behind them. Who ordered that? She asked. Darrow checked his intercept data. Not the flagship. Signal source is a mid-formation vessel, sub-commander class designation. Renas was quiet for a moment. Petra's voice came through the comm. Rearguard is in my firing solution. Your call. Renas watched the 3 ships hold their position. They were not firing wildly. They were not running. They were doing their job, the job someone had decided to do without being asked, covering the retreat of ships that had no part in the command decisions that brought this fleet here. Leave them, Renas said. Petra paused. Say again. Leave the rear guard. Let them pull back the ones behind them. She watched the display. Target the ships that are still advancing on us. Let the others go. Nobody argued. That was the thing about the Unyielding's crew. They trusted the Admiral, not because they always understood her decisions immediately, but because in 30 years of her career, the decisions had been worth trusting. Bayo understood, though. He figured it out while he was watching the list of silent Veth ships grow, and he thought about what she had said to him earlier. Yes, 1 chance to leave. She was still giving it. Not to the whole fleet anymore. Just to the ones who had someone willing to stand and cover their exit. The battle ran for another 11 minutes. When it was done, 27 Veth ships were destroyed or crippled and drifting. 13 had escaped, including the ruling tide, which had taken heavy damage but held together. The Unyielding came to rest beside the Veth flagship at close range. Close enough that Fail, pressing his face to the viewport on the damaged bridge, could see light through the Unyielding's windows. Movement inside. Human crew, moving at their usual unhurried pace, carrying out whatever tasks needed doing after a battle. The comm panel on the ruling tide opened. Renat Cross's voice came through again. "I would like to speak to your admiral." Sorrow had imagined this moment many times over his career, in the way commanders imagine scenarios they believe will never happen. He had imagined being beaten. He had imagined losing ships. He had imagined the humiliation of a failed campaign. He had never imagined this part, sitting in his damaged command chair, the smoke still being pulled out by the ventilation system, the display showing the Unyielding filling his entire forward view, and being asked to come to the screen for a conversation. He considered refusing, for about 4 seconds. Then Leva said quietly that the human ship's weapons were still active and pointed at them, and that a conversation was probably the better option. He accepted the channel. The woman who appeared on his screen was not what he had built in his imagination. He was not sure what he had expected. Something harder, maybe. Something colder. He had been fighting a machine for the past hour, and he had constructed an image of the thing inside it to match. Renat Cross looked tired. Not broken. Not triumphant. Just tired, the way people look when they have been doing something difficult for a very long time and are still not finished. She looked at him with the direct, flat attention of someone who had already said everything dramatic, and was now interested only in what happened next. "Hi, Admiral Saru," she said. "Admiral Cross," he said. He used her title because she had earned it today and because he was no longer in a position where he could afford to insult her. "I am going to release your remaining ships," she said. "All 13. Your crippled vessels will have time to transfer crew before I have them towed to a neutral station. The crew will be returned." Saru stared at her. He was looking for the conditions. There were always conditions. And in exchange. "Nothing," she said. "This is not a negotiation." He did not understand that. He said so. Renat was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your conclave has been taking human colonies for 11 years. 14 of them, not with battles. You just moved in, told the people there the land now belonged to the conclave, and waited for them to leave or be removed. You did it because you looked at us and decided we would not stop you, that we could not." She paused. "We let you think that." Saru said nothing. "We have been watching the conclave for 60 years, she said. "We know what it does. We know how it expands. We know which species it has absorbed and which ones it erased, and how it decides which outcome a species receives." She let that sit for a moment. "We built these ships so that when the day came that the conclave reached far enough into our space, we would be able to say stop and have it mean something." "You could have stopped us years ago," Saru said. "Yes." "Then why wait?" "Because we did not want to fight you," she said. "We wanted you to know we could. There is a difference." Fail, standing at the back of the bridge, had activated his recorder. He was getting every word. He was not sure who this recording was for or what category he would file it under, but he knew it was important in a way that went beyond anything he had been sent to document. His hands were very steady. He focused on keeping them that way. Leva had moved to a console near the side of the bridge where she could pull up data without being obvious about it. She ran a quiet search through the intelligence network while Saru talked. She was looking for something specific. Saru asked the question that had been in the back of his mind since Draws first read the size of the Unyielding out loud. "How many ships like this do you have?" Renat looked at him. She did not answer. That was its own kind of answer, and Saru understood it immediately. The way a person understands a door that is closed without needing to open it to know what is behind it. "The border is what it was 11 years ago," Renat said. "The 14 colonies will be addressed through formal channels. Your conclave will receive documentation on all of it within the week. She paused. If the conclave decides to send another fleet, we will be here. We will always be here. I would prefer you go home and make sure they understand that. Why are you telling me instead of destroying us? Saru asked. It was an honest question. He genuinely did not understand mercy that came from strength rather than weakness. Because you are going home either way, Renas said. I just want to make sure you bring the right story with you. She closed the channel. Saru sat in the silence of his damaged bridge. The smoke was mostly clear now. The display still showed the unyielding outside, enormous and patient. Leva looked up from her console. She had found what she was looking for, a footnote in a deep survey report, a number, a small number in a minor clause about construction activity in human deep space. She stared at it for a long time. Then she closed the file and sat down in her station chair and looked at nothing for a while. Fail watched her face and saw something cross it that he could not name at first. Then he recognized it. It was the look of someone who had read all the way to the last line of a book and found that the ending had been decided long before any of them arrived in this system. She had not asked her question out loud. She did not need to. 3 weeks after the battle at Ardan Station, the Veth survivors crossed back into conclave space. They came in broken. The ruling tide's hull bore scorched lines that the repair crews had patched but not erased. 4 of the other ships were running on partial power, towed by the stronger vessels, their crews crowded into sections that still held pressure. The fleet that had left conclave space 40 ships strong returned 13. The Conclave High Council assembled within 48 hours. Saru stood before them and gave his report. He was precise. He stated the numbers. He stated the engagements. He did not attempt to explain it in a way that made himself look better than the facts allowed, because the facts were going to be checked by everyone in the room and there was no version of them that was salvageable. He had been beaten. He said so. Then Ambassador Fail stood up. He had spent the journey home editing his recording down to 12 minutes. He had kept the approach to Ardan Station. He had kept the moment the unyielding emerged from behind the planet. He had kept the full visual of all 7 human battleships in position around the fleet. He had kept every word Renat Cross said. He played it for the council without introduction. He just pressed the button and let it run. The council chamber was very quiet for those 12 minutes. When it ended, no one spoke for a while. Then the questions started. How large? How many? How long had humans been building? Why had the intelligence reports not been acted on? The questions went in circles because circles were easier than the answer, which was that they had looked at humanity for 60 years and seen what they wanted to see and nothing else. Leva was not in that chamber. She had filed her own report, the technical one, with the Conclave's Fleet Analysis Division. She had included the footnote, the number from the Deep Survey report. She had written a single line of commentary beneath it. The line read, "This figure represents confirmed construction. It does not account for assets not yet discovered." Then she had gone home and slept for 14 hours. On the Unyielding, 3 weeks after the battle, life had mostly returned to its regular shape. Petra Olen was running maintenance cycles on the weapons arrays that had taken secondary damage. She was thorough and unhurried about it. Darrow Wells was writing the formal after-action analysis, which was 50 pages of precise language and no unnecessary words. He had been working on it for a week, and he expected to spend another week finishing it. Bayo Addies wrote a letter home. He told his family that he was fine, that the posting was going well, that space was very large and very quiet most of the time. He did not describe the battle. He did not know how to describe it in a way that would mean the right thing to someone who had not been there, so he left it out and wrote about the stars instead. He deleted that version and wrote another one. He deleted that too. Eventually he sent the first one because it was true even if it was not complete. Renat Cross was in her quarters reading the preliminary diplomatic response from the conclave, which had arrived that morning. It was formal and careful, and said a great deal without committing to anything directly. She had expected that. Diplomacy moved slowly, and that was fine. She had written her own response in the margins of the document in small, neat handwriting, then sent it to the communications department to be typed properly. She was not happy about the battle. She had never been happy about battles. She had built the unyielding and the battle group around it and spent 30 years preparing for a day she had hoped would never come. And when it came, she had done what was necessary, and now she would do what came after, which was the harder and longer work. The recording fail had made continued to move through conclave space, and then beyond it. Species with access to conclave diplomatic channels received copies. Navigation reports from the Ardan system circulated through the independent trader networks. Someone with access to the scan data published the comparative hull dimensions in an open scientific forum, because information like that traveled regardless of who wanted to contain it. Species that had been watching humanity the same way the conclave had, as a minor power, an emotional and primitive species not worth serious attention, pulled up the forum post and looked at the numbers, and then looked at their own ship specifications for comparison. Some of them quietly opened their intelligence files on human deep space activity and read them properly for the first time. Some of them found footnotes of their own. The border held, not because of a treaty, not immediately, but because the conclave returned the 14 colonies in the formal diplomatic process that followed, and because no second fleet was sent, and because the recording of Renat Cross saying, "We wanted you to know we could," was the kind of thing that settled into a culture and stayed there. Fail's final journal entry, the one he wrote on the last night of the voyage home, was 4 sentences. He wrote that he had gone to Ardan Station to record a conquest. He had not recorded that. He did not have a name for what he had recorded instead, so he made one up. He called it a reckoning. That was the word that stayed with him. He thought it was the right one.